like many of you, have been watching Bridgerton recently with the new arrival of season 3, and I'm a little bit obsessed, which I hate to admit because it's such a cheesy thing to be obsessed about, but I am. And so I decided that I was going to read all the Bridgerton books, and here I am starting that journey. And I figured I would make a video documenting all of it so I can share my thoughts, rank the books, etc., etc. So I'm starting my journey with the first book, which is The Duke and I. I'm reading it on ebook, so I don't have anything to hold up, but I'll just insert a little picture here. Basically, if you don't know, Bridgerton takes place during the Regency era. It follows the Bridgerton family, which has 8 children, and each book is the love, yeah. Each book is the love story of each Bridgerton child. And then during all of this, there's also a very popular gossip sheet called Miss Whistledown that is reporting on the behavior of the Ton and just generally stirring up shit. So let's talk a little bit about The Duke and Me. I'm only on page 70, so I haven't gotten that far yet. I believe it's about 300 something pages. But the first book follows Daphne Bridgerton, who is the eldest Bridgerton girl, and her love story with Duke Simon. So essentially, Duke Simon had a really shitty childhood. He hates his father, and he's determined never to marry, never to have children. And then you have Daphne, who is out and about and trying to find a husband, and her mother's desperately trying to find a husband for her. When Simon comes back to London, he's basically thrown into the Ton, and all of these women are trying to get him to marry their daughters. Whereas Daphne, in the book at least, has been out on the marriage market for about 2 years, and she's really sick of it, and she hasn't found any eligible men to marry. So they come up with this plan, or at least Simon comes up with this plan, where they're going to pretend to be interested in each other and pretend like they're going to marry so that he can get all these nosy mothers off his back, and so that Daphne will seem more eligible to other bachelors, and hopefully she'll be able to find someone to marry. So that's what's happening so far. I will say the books are interesting because with the TV show you get a lot more of the other characters. Like by this point in the TV show we already knew the Bridgerton family and knew their personalities pretty much, but in the book so far, like, it's pretty much just Daphne and Simon that you're hearing about. Anthony has made an appearance. I mean, Benedict and Colin have also made appearances, but you barely know them. Anthony, you know a little bit more because he's talking to Simon and stuff, but I haven't heard shit about like Eloise or Hyacinth or really Penelope or any of the other characters in the series. So I'm finding that to be very interesting. But yeah, I'm gonna get back to reading and I'll update you once I'm done with the first book. See ya. Hello, I have finished the first Bridgerton book, The Duke and I. I think I was calling it The Duke and Me before. That is not the name. It is The Duke and I just don't know grammar. So I have some thoughts. My first thought is a controversial one, and it is that the TV show, at least for season 1, is significantly better than the book. And the book essentially just focuses on Daphne and Simon and their love story, which is okay, but like, I watched the TV show before I read the book, and in the TV show, you get to explore all the other characters, and there's like subplots and smaller storylines that are going on. It's not just the romance, but in the book it's just the romance. The other characters you barely even see. Like Anthony, Benedict, and Colin make appearances, but you never see Eloise, you never see Hyacinth, you barely see the Featheringtons or anyone else. Hi, Severa. So I just felt the plot to be a little bit lacking. Like, I really think it would have been better if it had been more fleshed out and there had been other storylines going on at the same time. Severa agrees with me, don't you? And like, maybe my opinion would be different if I thought the romance was good. Another controversial opinion. I just felt like it was like insta-lovey. Like Daphne was immediately in love with Simon, and he was immediately in love with her too, even though he like doesn't say it like she does. It just felt like she barely even knew him, and then all of a sudden she was like, oh my god, I'm in love with him and I want to marry him. And I think just personally, I wish there had been more of the courting, like a more of a build up to that. I feel like it would have felt more believable and I would have been more invested in the story, but that's not how it went. It does kind of feel like, because part of this book, like I think the first half takes place during their courtship or whatever it is, and then the second half follows their marriage, and I feel like the author was just in a rush to get to the marriage part because the courtship part was just kind of unsatisfying personally. And then just like in the first season of the show, there's also some issues with consent in this book. I won't go into it because I'm gonna try my best not to spoil these books, or at least not spoil them as much as I can. I have also heard that the issues with consent are a continuing thing in the series, so that's not great. That's not a good thing. I'm not excited about that. And yeah, I just feel like I've read better romances. I like the time period. I can't say I've read many historical romances. Like the only romance author I've really read is like Emily Henry, and even then I've only read like 3 of her books. So I'm not really a romance girly, but I'm still giving them a shot, and they're fun to read is the other thing though. Like, so I'm giving The Duke and I 2 stars, like, which to me means that it was just an okay book, but it is really fun and addicting to read. I will say that I almost gave it 3 stars just for that. I read this in less than 24 hours. If you take out the part where I was sleeping, I read this in less than 12 hours. I just couldn't put it down. So I'm really excited for book 2, which is The Viscount Who Loved Me. This, of course, is the same as series 2 of the TV show. It follows Anthony and Kate. I'm gonna get to reading, and I might update you halfway through to let you know what it's about, but I also think I might just wait until the end of the book because we have 9 books to get through. I will see you soon. Goodbye. Fear, you want to say goodbye? She says goodbye too. Okay, I finished The Viscount Who Loved Me, and I gotta say, not bad. So essentially, this second book is following Anthony's love story, and at the beginning of the book, he's like determined to take a bride, but he's also determined that he can't fall in love with his bride because since his dad died at the age of 38, he's convinced that he won't live past the age of 38, so he's like, I can't possibly find a woman that I will fall in love with because I just die and leave her too young. So basically, he asks his brothers who the belle of the season is, and the belle of the season is this young woman named Edwina, and so he's like, okay, I'll just marry her then. But the issue is that Edwina has an older sister named Kate, and Kate hates Anthony and is convinced that he's a complete rake, and she's trying to stand in between him getting engaged to her. And then eventually him and Kate fall in love, which isn't a spoiler because you can see it happening from the first page. I ended up giving this one 3 stars, so it's not like a new favorite or anything like that, but I did still enjoy it. I thought that it was good. I think this is much better than the first book. Kate and Anthony's romance actually has some build up and feels a lot more realistic and natural than Daphne and Simon's did in the first book. I also didn't even really mind that there weren't other characters in the book. Like, I know I complained about that for the first one, about how there weren't any more subplots and how the only characters we talked about were Daphne and Simon, but in this book I actually didn't even notice that happening. I think because I enjoyed the romance and the love story between them so much. I really liked the enemies to lovers trope. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was really well done. Although I feel like you can't really be enemies unless it takes place in like a fantasy setting, because otherwise it's just like 2 people who don't like each other then end up liking each other. It's not like you're not an enemy. I don't know. It's ridiculous. However, I do still think that season 2 of the show is better than this book, and I think that's mainly just because the actors who play Anthony and Kate have such crazy chemistry in real life. You can like feel it through the screen, and while they did have chemistry in the book, it just wasn't as satisfying as the chemistry they have in the show. I do think that there was one major thing that bothered me though about this book. I don't know why I'm doing this with my finger. That's weird. Anyway, both of the characters had really weird fears. Like I mentioned already, Anthony was like terrified of dying, convinced he was going to die at the age of 38 because his dad did, which just doesn't make any sense. The author even had a note at the end of the book talking about how like this is a common fear that men have, and maybe it is, but it's still stupid. I'm sorry. And then at the same time, Kate was like terrified of thunderstorms, and there's a whole scene where like there's a thunderstorm and lightning happening and she's like having an absolute panic attack, like hiding under a desk and crying and freaking the fuck out, and it's just a little much. Like, I think both of those fears are just a little bit too dramatized. How do you say that word? I don't know. Like, I think that could have been, like, those fears by themselves aren't that unrealistic, I guess. Like, they're not that unbelievable. But to the point where they're portrayed in this book, it was just so dramatic and so overdone that it made them feel really silly. And it kind of took me out of the book a little bit. But overall, I did enjoy this. So now I'm going to be moving on to the third book, which is called An Offer from a Gentleman, I think. Let me see. Yes, An Offer from a Gentleman. This one I'm excited about because this is Benedict's story, and I actually know nothing about Benedict's story because the show skips this one and goes right into Penelope and Colin's story in the 3rd season. And Benedict really hasn't played a big role in the show, like, at all. He's a very minor character. You don't know much about him. So I'm very excited about this one. Although, I do feel like, again, I haven't finished season 3 yet, so maybe there is something in season 3 about this, but I do feel like Benedict is like gay or bi, so if there isn't any tease about that in here, I'm gonna be a little sour, but we will see. Maybe show Benedict is just a completely different character than book Benedict. We'll find out. But yeah, I'm gonna get to reading book number 3 and I'll update you as soon as I'm finished with it. Bye. Let me just say I'm killing it. I finished An Offer from a Gentleman, aka I finished 2 books today, which is wild. I can't remember the last time I read a book in a day, but it happened, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. So essentially, An Offer from a Gentleman is Benedict's story, as I said previously. It's kind of a Cinderella story, so you're following our main character, Sophie, who is the bastard child of an earl. She is taken in by him, but he tells everyone that she's his ward, and then he dies, leaving her with an evil stepmother, who then forces her to become a servant, but she steals away for one night for a masquerade ball at the Bridgertons, and there she meets Benedict. It's just a one night thing though, because she has to be home by midnight, because again, Cinderella story. And then they don't meet again until 9 years later. And that's all I'm going to summarize for you. I gotta say, I did really enjoy this one. It was really fun not knowing where the story was going, because of course for the first 2 books, I know what's going to happen since I've seen the TV shows already, but this one was completely fresh. I also really liked the romance between Sophie and Benedict. I found it to be really sweet, and again, it felt more believable than the romance in The Duke and I. It was also nice because I feel like this book fleshed out a lot of the other characters a lot more. Like, we saw a lot more from Hyacinth, Eloise, who's the other one? Francesca. I swear we saw more of them, which was nice because it made them feel more like real people, more like actual characters, whereas before they were just like random people who were named sometimes. Now they actually have personalities that we've gotten to experience. All in all, this book was really entertaining, and I just could not put it down. Again, I read it in a day. I'm giving it 3 stars. Honestly, I could rate it a little bit higher, but my main issue with this book is that it is problematic, which, I mean, at this point I'm kind of just expecting these books to be problematic because I feel like it's just typical for the genre and for this series. So essentially, the reasons I'm saying it's problematic is that, first of all, Benedict is kind of blackmailing Sophie for the bulk of this novel, just kind of like forcing her to go to London with him, even though she says she doesn't want to. He's also repeatedly asking her to be his mistress, and she's repeatedly saying no, but he's still trying to pressure her into it. And there's another scene where consent seems to be an issue here. Specifically, they're about to have sex, and he's like, if you don't want to do this, you need to tell me now, not in 10 minutes. And it's like, I think she can say no whenever she wants, actually. I think you have to listen to her regardless. But I mean, again, I've just kind of come to expect it because I've heard there's issues with consent in these novels, but there's definitely room for the author to do better, and I think that she should do better. But yeah, that's it for this one, and I'm off to read number 4, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is the story of Colin and Penelope, which I'm really excited about. I'm excited to see how it differs from the show. I'm excited to see if we hear anything about Lady Whistledown, because so far, we haven't really seen much of her, as I said in the first book. It's just excerpts at the beginning of each chapter from one of her, like, papers. But in the show, I think you know by the first season who Lady Whistledown is, and there's still no clue of it. And I'm thinking it's gonna be revealed in this next book. I feel like it should be, but we'll find out. So that's all, and I'll see you after I finish book 4. Goodbye. Hello, I have finished what book is this? Book 4, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. I can't believe that I'm 4 books in, first of all. So essentially, book 4 follows the story of Penelope and Colin, who have been friends for like ever. But in this book, Colin finally starts to notice Penelope, who has been in love with him ever since she first met him. But there's also a subplot going on this time, where Lady Danbury announces at one of these parties, I guess is the word, that she will offer £1,000 to anyone who uncovers the identity of Lady Whistledown. So you also have that going on in the background while you're also seeing the love story between Penelope and Colin. I gotta say, I think this one was my favorite one so far, which is surprising because I knew what was gonna happen in this one since I watched the TV show, although obviously things went down very differently in the book. For instance, like in these books, there isn't really, Queen Charlotte isn't a part of these books at all, so any storyline with her is greatly different in the books than it is in the TV show. But yeah, I wasn't expecting this one to be my favorite, but I'm actually giving it 3.5 stars, which is the highest I've rated any of these books so far. I really liked the relationship between Penelope and Colin. I thought it was really sweet. I thought it built up really well, and I absolutely loved the parts about Lady Whistledown and uncovering her identity. There was also, I said this with the last one as well, but in this book I really feel like the other characters got fleshed out. We saw a lot of Eloise, given that she's Penelope's best friend. We saw a lot of Hyacinth, and like Daphne makes an appearance in this one as well. So it's just kind of fun to be using the full cast of characters for once. Now, there are some tropes in these books that I'm not loving. For instance, like the whole super innocent girl and like the fact that she's innocent like turns the guy on who's very well experienced. It's just a little bit annoying to be reading constantly. I also feel like every single one of these like main female leads, when they have sex for the first time, they just talk about how weird it feels, which which is an interesting thing to occur more than once. But it was kind of easy to overlook those things in this book in particular, just because I ended up enjoying it so much. So yeah, next is what's it called? To Sir Philip with Love, and this is Eloise's story, and I'm so pumped about this one. I think Eloise is my favorite character, and this is another one. From here on out, actually, I don't know what happens in these books since the TV show has only 3 seasons. So I'm so excited to find out what happens in this book. I am also, let me say, so shocked that I'm enjoying myself. I thought all of these books were going to go like the first one did, where it was like a 2-star, it was okay, but I didn't really want to read them anymore. But I'm actually finding as I continue to read, I want to read them even more. Which is like slightly embarrassing, because I mean, historical, like, bodice ripper romance isn't exactly very me. It doesn't really feel like the kind of literature I want to be proud of reading. But there's also no like harm in just reading stuff for fun. So I shouldn't be too judgy about it. And I am really enjoying myself, so that's what matters. But yeah, I'm going to continue reading and I'll update you as soon as I'm done with Eloise's story. Goodbye. Okay, I have finished To Sir Philip with Love. What a title. And I have some thoughts. So essentially, as I said before, this is Eloise's story. At the beginning of this book, you find out that Eloise has been in correspondence with a man named Philip for about a year now. He had been engaged to one of Eloise's like distant cousins and she had died, and then Eloise had reached out to him to say that she was like sorry for his loss, and they just started talking. And eventually, after about a year of this, he mentioned that he'd be interested in marrying her and asked her if she wanted to come visit him in the country to see if there would be a good match. He said that he would bring his great aunt or someone over to like watch over them so it would be all proper and stuff. But instead of like writing a letter and saying that she would come, she just decides to randomly show up and she leaves London without telling anyone in her family where she is going, and she just shows up at this man's doorstep, and he is obviously flustered. And from there, as you can guess, they fall in love, as happens in every single Bridgerton book and every romance book as a whole. You always know what's gonna happen. So I did end up giving this book 3 stars because it's just like these books are enjoyable, they're fun to read, okay? Like, it's so easy to just kind of like lose yourself in them and just read them all day long, as I've been doing today. I finished 2 books today and I read the bulk of both of them today. Like, that's crazy. But I will say this is the first Bridgerton book where I just wasn't very excited about the pairing of the couple. It could be that Eloise is my favorite character, and I think also my perspective of Eloise is tinted from the show because the show portrays her as being like very much a feminist, very political. The books don't do that as much, but that's still who she is as a character in my mind. And what really bugged me about Philip is that he essentially just wants a wife who will do all the household tasks for him and like raise his children, because that's another thing, he has children and they are like little devils, and all he wants is a wife to like take care of everything so that he can go and work in his greenhouse. And he says that to her, which is like the least romantic thing I can think of. They're not like in love when they get married, they're kind of like forced to marry, so I don't expect it to be like uber romantic. Hi, Saphira, are you joining us? But it was just so annoying, and he's just so sexist. And like, that isn't to say that the other Bridgerton men aren't sexist, because given the time period that the author is writing the setting in or whatever, obviously they would also be sexist. But it hasn't come across in any of the other books. In any of the other books, it just seems like they love their wives or partners so much that they would treat them as equals. Whereas here it just feels like Philip wants Eloise to be his servant, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. And then even after they're married, like, that doesn't change for a while. Like, he just wants her to do all the tasks and then have sex with her, and that's like all their marriage is in the beginning, and I just thought it was kind of gross. So I wasn't happy about that, especially for my favorite character, especially for a character that's supposed to be like a feminist. Like, why would you pair her with the most sexist man? So I'm not really happy about that, but at the end of the day I did still enjoy it, hence why I gave it 3 stars. Just probably like, other than The Duke and I, that one's definitely my least favorite. This is like my second least favorite of the bunch, but that's all I can say about that. I'm on to book number 6, which is called When He Was Wicked, which is a very interesting title. This is Francesca's book. All I know about Francesca so far is that she was previously married in some other book. I think Benedict's book mentioned that she had gotten married, but then she was very soon widowed. And that's all we know about her, and that she lives in Scotland. And I love Scotland, so I'm excited about the setting. That's all. I will see you soon. Goodbye. Okay, I just finished When He Was Wicked, which has the worst title out of all the books, and I also found it to be the worst book. So there you go. That makes sense. She cursed it from the beginning. This book is Francesca's story. So essentially at the beginning of the book, you're following Francesca, who is married to John. This happened in an earlier book, and we didn't really get to see their romance. Hi, Saphira. This happened in an earlier book, and we didn't really get to see the romance between them at all. But you're also introduced to John's cousin, Michael. And from the very beginning of the book, Michael talks about how he's in love with Francesca and has been in love with her ever since he first saw her at her wedding. And then, surprisingly, John dies out of nowhere. So then it's like this love story between Francesca and Michael, but it's a very slow burn love story. Michael is just in love with her the whole time. Francesca decides to go on the marriage mark, and then things kind of progress from there. So the main reason I couldn't stand this book is because of Michael. I liked him in the beginning. I kind of liked the idea that he was like a rake. I liked the idea that Francesca wasn't a virgin, because that's been like a big thing this whole series, is like, oh my god, she's so innocent, that's so hot, and it's been kind of annoying. So it's kind of nice that she wasn't a virgin, she was experienced going into the relationship. But when Michael began to like court her, it was when I really started having issues with him. Like, he tries to seduce her, well, he does seduce her because he knows that like if they have sex, she's gonna feel like they need to be married, which is so coercive. And he says that to her too, like after they've had sex a few times, and he just keeps having sex with her because he's convinced that she's gonna marry him if he does. And there was one scene where like it seems like they're about to have sex, and she says no very clearly multiple times, and he gets so mad at her that he like kicks her out of the house. And like, okay, I guess he's not just mad because she refused sex, like he's mad at the whole situation stuff, but regardless, he kicked her out because she refused sex. So he just got so annoying. And then I also I believed from the beginning that Michael was in love with Francesca. I think the author did a good job setting that up and continuing it throughout the book, but I never believed that Francesca loved Michael, and it just happened all of a sudden in like the last chapter of the book. She was like, I love you. So I didn't buy that, and I didn't enjoy this book. I gave it 2 stars. It was okay, because again, I did like the beginning, but I just did not like the middle or the end, and it took me the longest to read out of all these books so far. So the next book has a silly little name. What is it? It's In His Kiss. And this is Hyacinth's story, which is actually surprising. I thought it was going to be Gregory's next, because for the most part, they've gone in order of birth, but not in this one. I'm a little apprehensive because it seems like I like the stories of Bridgerton men more than the Bridgerton ladies, because I just haven't really liked most of the ladies' like love interests, but I have liked the Bridgerton men and their love stories more. And also, like, Hyacinth is one of my favorite characters in the books. She has like such a personality, and I just know that Julia Quinn is gonna force her to go with some stupid man who is just gonna be awful, probably, judging off of To Sir Philip with Love and When He Was Wicked. So I'm kind of upset about this. I'm hoping it gets better, and that's all I can say. I'm gonna get to reading It's In His Kiss, and I will let you know how it goes. And honestly, I'm getting really tired of reading these books now after that last one. So this might be very painful, so wish me good luck. I have finished the 7th Bridgerton book, and I'm starting the video saying that instead of saying the name of the book because I can't quite remember it. I think it's In His Kiss or something like that, but we'll just pretend that I know what it is. As I said earlier, this is Hyacinth's story. So essentially you're following Hyacinth and also this man named Gareth. Gareth, at the beginning of the book, is told by his father that he's actually a bastard, and then shortly after that he comes into possession of his grandmother's journal, which is written entirely in Italian. He finds out that Hyacinth can read and write in Italian, so he gives it to her to transcribe, and they find out that there are diamonds hidden in his father's house. And then also, obviously, because this is a Bridgerton book, a romance forms. I gave this book 3 stars. Oh, I do want to say quickly, I changed my mind about To Sir Philip with Love, Eloise's story. I'm giving that book 2 stars because I was on the phone with my sister talking about it, and I realized that I did not like that book. So that's a 2-star book. This book was 3 stars, so it wasn't that bad. I did like it. I think Hyacinth might be my favorite character in the books, actually, over Eloise. The book Hyacinth is exactly like the TV show Eloise. Book Eloise isn't quite as good as TV show Eloise, if this makes any sense to anyone other than me. I also liked Hyacinth's relationship with Gareth. I thought it was like fun, and I liked the way that they played off of each other. I did not like that he purposely seduced her because he knew that she would never call off the marriage if they slept together. Didn't like that. But other than that, I liked him. But that's just a hard thing to overcome. I did also like that this book had some subplot, like with the diamonds there. Although it was kind of funny because they just kept breaking into his father's house. They broke into his house like 3 or 4 times and they were never caught by the butler or anyone in residence. So that wasn't very believable. But overall, I think it was like a fun book. I did enjoy my time with it. And honestly, I'm running out of things to say because I feel like all of these books are the same in a lot of ways. Yet again, there's the, oh my god, she's so innocent thing. Yet again, he's a rake with a bad reputation. It's like, okay, I know what I'm getting myself into. So I'm moving on to the last book. I thought there were 9 in the original series, but there's actually only 8, which makes sense because there's 8 Bridgerton children. The 9th one that I was thinking of is actually a prequel, and I'm getting sick of these, so I will not be reading an extra book if I don't have to. So the last book is Gregory's, and it's called On the Way to the Wedding, and I will check in with you once I have finished that. Goodbye. I have finished the very last Bridgerton book, which honestly was a feat. I can't believe that I've read 8 books in the span of like a week, maybe? Maybe a little bit longer than that, but regardless, this has been a doozy. So, the 8th Bridgerton book is called On the Way to the Wedding, and this is Gregory's story. At the beginning of this book, the very first chapter, Gregory is racing into a church to stop a wedding, and he's begging the bride not to marry her potential husband. But you don't know who the bride is. And then after that, it takes a step back and looks at the story a few months earlier. And there it shows Gregory meeting Lucy and Hermione, and instantly he falls in love with Hermione, and Lucy, Hermione's best friend, is giving him tips as to how to win her affections. So that's a little summary I've got for you. To be honest, this book kind of dragged for me. I think this is the book it took me the longest to read, and it wasn't even because I had lack of time or anything like that. Like, I just didn't feel like reading it. So it was kind of boring. Like, the first chapter grabbed your attention so well and made me very interested in the story. But then after that, it just kind of dragged and it was boring and slow. It picked up at the end, but I still didn't like it that much. So I gave it 2 stars. I thought it was just okay at the end of the day. I also didn't really like, this isn't a spoiler because you know that Gregory's going to end up with Lucy because there's 2 perspectives, Gregory's and Lucy's, and you just know how these books are going to go. It's a romance book. It's not that hard. But I did not like that Gregory loved Hermione first because there's just something like very unromantic about the idea of like a guy falling in love with your best friend when he sees the 2 of you and then like later changing his mind. Like, that's just not very romantic to me. Maybe I'm the odd one out there. I don't know. I just didn't like that. So I don't think this was a very great ending to the series, but end the series it did. So all in all, I've had a much better time reading these Bridgerton books than I thought I was going to have. I honestly went into this video thinking I was going to hate all of them, but I was very pleasantly surprised that these books are actually very, very entertaining. They may not be the best books ever written. I mean, for instance, the author is constantly switching POVs in the same scene, which is just trademark of bad writing. The writing isn't like beautiful and lyrical. It's often very cheesy, as any romance book is. There's also a lot of tropes that I've discussed. There's also some issues with consent in many of the books, but I can't deny that I did have a fun time reading them, and it does make me appreciate the show even more and makes me more excited for further seasons of the show to come out. If I had to rank these, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton is definitely my favorite. That was Penelope and Colin's story. My least favorite is probably either Gregory's story or Francesca's, and all the other ones just fall in between. I'm not gonna rank all of them. I know I just said that I would, but then as soon as that came out of my head, I was like, that's too much. But yeah, honestly, if you like the TV show, I do recommend reading the books. I think it gives you a really like clear idea of the characters and what's happening next, and I think it will make you even more excited to watch the upcoming seasons. So there you go. Those are all my reviews of the 8 Bridgerton books. There are a lot of prequels to the series, so I may read some of those sometime because it does seem like fun, and I did buy the bind up, so I already have the first prequel series on my Nook app. So let me know if you'd be interested in hearing my reviews of those. Let me know what you think of Bridgerton down below. Just let me know anything down below. I like reading your comments. And that is all for this video. Thank you, and I'll see you soon with another video. Goodbye.